this is Attorney Walter Knott. I wanted to take a moment to explain an article that was put out by dearcolleague.us. Talks specifically about the Automatic Boost to Communities Act. Let's go right into it. This is pertaining to the whole $2,000 and then recurring UBI $1,000 a month payments until up to basically a year after the COVID crisis is over. Let's go right to reading it. Rashida Tlaib is the Congress woman who's basically promoting this. It's right here. This is the fact sheet specifically that was created by it. Obviously, she's a Michigan Democrat. And what else do you need to know? It's HR 1030. There was an older one. Don't get the older one. They have a new one that they put out that fixed some of the issues. So HR, House Representatives 1030. All right, let's read through this article real quick. During this global pandemic, Congress must act swiftly to protect every single member of our communities. That's true. The Automatic Boost to Communities Act and they're calling it the ABC Act, would immediately provide $2,000 to every person in America, followed by a recharge of $1,000 every month until 1 year after the end of the COVID-19 crisis. So this is like the beginning of a UBI, Universal Basic Income. These payments would apply to every person in America, and they would be distributed as prepaid U.S. debit cards. This bill would lift up unbanked and underbanked communities, creating a buffer for people who have seen their costs of living rise for decades as their wages have stagnated. Now, we're going to learn later that this bill, the way they intend to fund it specifically, and I did a video on that, having to do with currency and how they intend to create coins off of the platinum that they have already stored, have another agency purchase those coins, and then have another agency create the debit cards and distribute the worth of those coins and debit cards. So basically, which would create mega, ultra, Thanos level hyperinflation, which would actually hurt the poor but help the rich in the long run. So, the bill would lift up unbanked so unlike a payroll tax cut, which would do little to benefit our most vulnerable. So that's true. A payroll tax cut is not going to help the most vulnerable, homeless, and low income, but a payroll tax cut is absolutely necessary because all the small businesses would then basically be allowed to go ahead and fund their people at a much higher level for a longer period of time, getting them out of it. So when they say a payroll tax cut isn't as good as this, no, a payroll tax is as good as this, because guess what? It's the working people and it's the people who own businesses, small businesses, medium businesses, large businesses, that pay all these taxes, that pay for all this stuff. So that's what pays for us to continue to collect and pull gold and platinum out of the earth. That's what continues to allow us to basically fund our products as a U.S. nation, to have bonds and things like that. They're the ones who pay all the taxes. We have a military because those are the working class people who pay the taxes. So unlike a payroll tax, which would do little benefit to our most vulnerable, our country needs a payroll tax. So don't let this article just shove it out of your mind like it's a bad thing. We need a payroll tax more than we need this, because the payroll tax will fund things to continue, because if we don't have a military that's funded, we have much larger problems. All right, so let's keep going. Unlike a payroll tax cut, which would do little to benefit our most vulnerable. So, and remember, this article is kind of taking away the value of a payroll tax cut. Payroll tax cuts are incredibly important. They allow small and mid-sized businesses to not have to pay as much out to, or pay even more out to, or just have protection to be able to pay their payroll taxes to their employees, to keep small businesses and medium businesses continuously going. So to be fair here, a payroll tax is actually more important than this. A lot of you guys are like, no, this other thing, it benefits me more. No, a payroll tax cut would actually help the country more, because it would get all these businesses continue to pay more and grow more and be able to go ahead and grow as a business to recover. Because remember, the working people and the tax-paying businesses, unlike the mega corporations that aren't paying nearly as much tax as they should, but the small and middle income based, the small and medium sized businesses and all those people working, including the people working for the big businesses, they're the ones who pay for all this stuff. They're the ones who pay for our military that keeps us safe. That way we don't have another Pearl Harbor situation, we don't have another 9/11 situation, stuff like that. We have a strong military that people are afraid of outside of this country. They don't want to mess with us. So the bottom line is a payroll tax cut is actually more important than this other option. But this other option would significantly help the low income and all people, but once again, I'll go into the other issues in another video, because we're only supposed to focus on dearcolleague.us for this. So let's keep going. All right, so the U.S. Treasury's Bureau of the Fiscal Service would administer debit cards to every person in every American state, territory, or D.C., and this article didn't go into, it would also send it out to basically not in the U.S. that meets certain requirements, and it would also send it out to a lot of people who are not citizens, who just came to this country illegally, etc. Cards would be distributed in 3 ways, so they took this straight from the fact sheet that was online on where is it, right here. So they took this from the fact sheet, specifically from Rashida Tlaib's website, right here. So basically they're going to send them out in direct mail, in-person pickup, or at-risk outreach. So the only really important part about this is that the at-risk outreach, I'm going to read this one again even though I read it with that one. A dedicated emergency responder corps would perform outreach to at-risk populations, including people who are elderly, homeless, physically disabled, or live in remote areas, to ensure that they receive their U.S. debit card and to simultaneously perform a general wellness check in case they need additional targeted assistance. This is a really good idea. This is a really great idea because this could also be included and modified, and I know the Republicans would push for this, to include in there basically a fraud assessment and basically go into, okay, is this person currently using and abusing drugs? Are these funds likely to be taken from them in an improper fashion by a drug dealer? Is this a mass terrorist utilization of, taking cards and basically, pulling all the funds? Having some sort of fraud group that's part of it, that's on the ground, that can collect evidence, absolutely crucial. Absolutely crucial, because we don't know how much fraud there was when it comes to the last 3 stimulus payments, and we can at least collect more on-the-ground information with this. Funding the program. This would be a money-based financial fiscal program for which no additional U.S. debt would be issued. So how do you get $2 trillion with no additional U.S. debt being issued? Well, you do it this way. Instead, the program would be funded directly from the Treasury using its legal authority to create money via coin, which is a statutory delegation of Congress's constitutional power of the purse. This approach would preserve the historical separation between the fiscal and monetary policy and avoid financial entanglement between the Treasury and the Federal Reserve. All right, this article took out all of the questionable, makes me fear and cry at night stuff from the fact sheet of this actual fact sheet for the House of Representatives write-up. This article, in my opinion, is being highly disingenuous in how it is omitting information to the general public on how it's going to be funded. This, to me, is reportable conduct. If you omit this much information on how they're going to finance it, and specifically omitting all the things that are going to make you really angry, this, to me, is, in my opinion, this is a Democrat writing specifically in support of it to try and basically make people think this is a perfect idea with no backdrop or no back issues or no problems that are going to bite them in the butt going forward. This, to me, is reportable conduct for somebody who essentially wrote an article. There's too much omitted from this that's relevant, that gives people both sides, for this to be an acceptable article, in my opinion. So whoever you'd report this group to for essentially creating this article, and I see for any additional questions, please contact Chastity Murphy, mail.house.gov. Yeah, this is a person that I would report for basically omitting too much information and creating biased information. This is not an acceptable article. Let me read to you what's actually from the fact sheet here, which is still light on facts about how basically this would be created. Okay. The mechanics of this funding approach would be as follows. The Treasury Secretary would direct the U.S. Mint to issue 2 1 trillion platinum coins under legal authority provided by 31 U.S.C. Section 5112, subsection K. So we're creating $2 trillion worth of platinum coins. Congress would direct the Federal Reserve to purchase the newly issued coins at full face value. So the Treasury Secretary would direct the U.S. Mint. So the Treasury Secretary is the boss that's saying, U.S. Mint, create these coins. Take all this rare metals that we have and make these coins. And then Congress would tell the Federal Reserve, we want you to now purchase all of these coins at face value. All right, because the way they usually work is they get a big discount with all this stuff. The Federal Reserve would complete the purchase by crediting the U.S. Mint's account at the Fed with $2 trillion in reserves. Starting to see how bad this is. Starting to see like how this funding is just going to create massive hyperinflation. The Fed would retain ownership over the two 1 trillion coins permanently in order to ensure its own balance sheet remains fully capitalized by the Treasury. So what they're doing here is the Feds now are retaining basically a stolen amount of $2 trillion, stolen from the U.S. Mint. So the U.S. Mint is basically, these coins are being stolen from the U.S. Mint. They're making these coins and then they're being stolen by the U.S. Mint. And as a result of that, what's happening is basically the Feds then get to hold on to those as kind of like the, hey, we're going to balance our sheet that way. That's how we're going to do it. Not good. To ensure its own balance sheet remains fully capitalized by the Treasury. The Treasury Secretary would sweep the newly created reserve funds from the Mint's account into the regular Treasury General account. It would sweep them. The Treasury would make the funds available to the Bureau of the Fiscal Service to disperse to every person in America in the form of prepaid U.S. debit cards. Okay, so sounds a little bit more detailed, right? And this is what dearcolleague.us put. This would be a money finance fiscal program for which no additional U.S. debt would be issued. Instead, the program would be funded directly from the Treasury using its legal authority to create money via coin, which is a statutory delegation of Congress's constitutional power of the purse. This approach would preserve the historical separation between fiscal and monetary policy and avoid financial entanglement between the Treasury and the Federal Reserve. See how like those two are very different? One shows you that one agency is stealing from another, and then a third agency is going to hold on to it to play mommy daddy, right? Whereas this is like, hey man, everything's cool. Everything's good in this article. This to me is reportable conduct. This to me is not acceptable when you write an article. Okay, so now here we go into the rationalization. Low-income people are disproportionately at risk of being uninsured or underinsured for medical care, and for many, even stocking up on the pantry can be an impossible financial hurdle, lacking resources to prepare and protect against the COVID-19 pandemic. That means a rent increase, medical bill, child care payment, tuition check, or even a blown tire can upset a family's financial stability. The ABC Act is designed to help cushion these blows during and after this global health crisis while chipping away at economic inequality in our society during the pandemic. To co-sponsor an automatic boost to Communities Act, please complete this form. Look, there is a better way to fund this. There are many better ways to fund this. This is not a great way to fund this. We're stealing rare metals from the U.S. Mint and then giving them away to another group that then is going to take their value in purchase price. If we do this, they'll just keep doing it. All the gold we have in reserve, hey, use it like this. We'll have one agency buy it from the other agency. Woohoo! Money! My point is, this is going to create a situation where homeless people won't be able to buy bread. Low-income people will not be able to buy bread. Forget about driving anywhere for vacations. Forget about going to church, synagogue. Forget about going and doing religious activities. You'll have to watch them online because you won't be able to afford to transport yourself from point A to point B. How do they come up with such moronic programs? I don't know. I don't know. It makes me start to think that like every senator and every House representative under a certain age that wants to get into that should have to have at least some level of financial education, like an MBA or some sort of degree in finance or something at the master's level or above, because, you know, it's just like, how did they come up with this? Anyway, guys, that is the dearcolleague.us article specifically on this act. You can find it. It looks like this. Okay. We're next going to be doing an article specifically written by Forbes. Forbes usually does a really good job. I haven't read it yet. I'm going to be reading it as we go through it. But bottom line is, so bottom line is, looks like they put something at the bottom of it, though, to hide what they wrote. But bottom line, we'll go through it. I'll see if it has enough information for us to talk about and then kind of go from there. Forbes almost always does a pretty good job of financial analysis because they are a money, based company. But they do get overly politically involved. So you saw some of that from their leadership with the last presidential election. Like, things they should have said, they just should have shut up on. They should not have said those things. They were out of control, and the articles that they put out were just wrong, and the statements they put out were just heavily handed in a political fashion. But Anyways, guys, we're going to go ahead and finish this video up. My name is Attorney Walter Knott. Have an absolutely wonderful day, and we'll go from there. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.